be their racing studio, primarily. And the fact that we've got, another full-size team and another sort of part team that do other things as well is just icing on the cake. But I think if there's a really good match, then it will work, hopefully, given what happened with the flight simulator. There is that case. I think the days of growing a games developer just to sell it, I think the vast majority that I've seen that have, right, we'll build it up and we'll get venture capital in and we'll go really huge, really quick, and then we'll sell. I think the publishers have got more wise to that sort of attitude. So yeah, I think there is a future for it, but I think it's more limited than it used to be. I think publishers are a little bit wiser than just sort of, we'll sell, I'll buy you, than they were.
I think the publishers have generally got better at identifying the things that don't work internally as well as the ones that don't work externally. So where an independent developer can just have their contract terminated or just not find more work if they fail to perform, the internal studios nowadays are not in quite the same feather-bedded position they might have been in 5 years ago.
So yeah, I think they're not being relocated like they used to be. They just shut the studio as if it was an independent.
So I don't know if it's quite the same. I mean, the reality I think is always that there is going to be a slight tendency to switch off your external contractors, which might include your independent developers as a publisher, before you switch off your internal studios. But that's only a tendency. If you fundamentally got something you don't think is working in a publisher, I think they're going to shut it down pretty quickly these days. I think that's true. And I think that's going to be true regardless of which business line whether you're an independent or a publisher in a studio.
There's something I'd add, which I think it's kind of the critical point, is that it doesn't matter whether you're Infinity Ward, and I guess most of you are familiar with the way that their deal went down, that they sold 30% of the studio. Activision had an option to buy them at the end of development if they wanted to execute that option. Because Activision are only going to send that check if it's smaller than the one they would have had to send for royalties. It's not a complicated thing to figure out. What tends to happen, even if you're a really, really strong AAA studio, is if you're successful with your first game for your new owner, you will then go into this cycle of making endless sequels for as long as they can milk that franchise. And if you're lucky, and the franchise is really big, you'll see your baby start giving out to all of their other internal studios who then start to make it for every other console and every other handheld device and everything else that can be done. And the minute you fail, you'll get shut down. You'll get sent off to do something else because you're too much of a specialist to be able to do anything else for that company. If you look at companies like Grey Matter, who were acquired by Activision having completed Return to Castle Wolfenstein, they disappeared so quickly it was quite scary and had a project cancellation. Now, there is certainly a risk in running an internal game developer, but the truth is that risk happens about once every 2 years when you're looking to negotiate another deal with another publisher for each project that you have, that you're dealing with. But for the period, as long as you choose your partners appropriately, then you'll do fairly well. We've had 7 years of business now without a single milestone payment being missed, a single cancelled project. We've never made a single redundancy in that entire time, and that's because we've worked with really good partners like Activision and now moved over to people like Bethesda Softworks. So part of the reason why we looked at Bethesda was because they have this huge slew of high-profile projects like Oblivion and Fallout 3, but part of it is the fact that they just got $300 million in investment. And I'm not stupid, and I know that if they have $300 million of cash in the bank, they're probably not going bust next week, and we'll probably be okay. And I think if people make the right business decisions, as they work out which deal they're going with and which publisher they're going to sign with, and they try to align themselves with the people that are most appropriate, then it works out really well. I think the happy medium is exactly what Ian's been doing, which is to really focus on the brand of each individual studio. In your case, you have like 6 or 7 now, right? And each one is known as a specialist for a certain area, but all of the things that they might be bad at, payroll, accounting, bookkeeping, is centralized and managed by somebody else.
That's my problem.
So,
Ian, come back. I just want to pick up on one thing.
Yeah, go for it.
So you just talked about somebody selling 30% of their studio. So I'm never going to be sitting here and saying somebody should or shouldn't sell. I think in the end, the elephant in the room we haven't talked about is how much you get paid as the owner for selling out. And, that's a very personal thing as to how much you'll take for your baby. But I would argue nobody should ever sell 30% of their developer. It's a really stupid thing to do, because if you sell 30% of your developer to a publisher, you can't sell the other 70% to anyone else. They wouldn't want it. You can't go anywhere else because you're part-owned by another publisher. It's a really, really silly idea.
And they're only going to execute it if they would have paid you more anyway.
Yeah. So there are
30%, and we know someone who was 10%,
Yeah.
then they couldn't sign up with anywhere else because 10% was owned by a publisher that would go, no, you can't sign up with them. So,
Yeah.
so there was stuff.
So, we've had that offer before of selling 25% of the company to a publisher, and it's just, you take all of it or you take none of it, but you can't take a bit of it.
No, it's not so bad with VCs because they're...
Yeah, no, that's fine. A third party, another source of finance.
It's just a different shareholder.
But if you've got a publisher as a shareholder, then clearly it materially affects the nature of your business.